Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind. Remember to subscribe to our free podcast so you won't miss any of our inspiring content. Here is episode 151.
The number one thing that all of us have to learn is how to live together.
Benjamin Franklin once said, "Do not curse the darkness, rather light a candle instead." If you're ready to set your mind on fire, then prepare yourself for the Luminous Mind with your host, Rebecca Bowman.
Today's fire starter is Ashley Logsdon. Ashley is a marriage and family coach who works with mamas from the inside out, connecting you to yourself, your spouse, and your children using checklists and personal coaches to understand personality styles, awareness, and minimizing the clutter in your home and heart. Your family can move from surviving to thriving, living proactive versus reactive lives, where the uniqueness in each of us strengthens us all. And Ashley will show you how. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
And her bio contains a whole lot more than that, but we're going to get into a lot of different topics. But before we do any of that, do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Oh, sure. I'd love to. So I have been in the coaching realm for about 12 years now as far as a business, and then living it before then just because my father was a life and career coach. So I've been in the coaching realm for a long time, and then in the past few years, I have taken my experience in my father's company on helping people to understand how to be a coach and to be certified in coaching, and I have taken that into the family side and become a marriage and family coach. Decided to practice what I preached with telling everybody else how to do it and working with people on the side. I figured out it was a time for me to make a business of it. So I have been doing that and blogging for years, and I love talking about authenticity and connection with people. So that has taken over with marriage and family, and also in dealing with our children. And that has kind of led us down a path of non-traditional schooling for our own children. So I've been married for 12 years, and I am an unschooling mama to 3 highly independent and very creative little girls.
Well, and they are with unschooling, right? That's what just now
very much
happens.
So. Yes,
Awesome.
Yes.
Well, and tell us a little bit about your family. Ashley has a fairly famous father. Do you want to tell us a little more about that?
So my father is Dan Miller. He's an author and a career coach. He wrote the book 48 Days to the Work You Love, was kind of the kickstart. And we kind of started it just from our own family struggles of going through living the entrepreneurial lifestyle, and my father building businesses and learning from his mistakes and growing from there. And as he had a bad business decision that resulted in us kind of losing everything, our home and our car and all of that, and starting over, he started to see how he could take his experience and help others to find work that was truly a good fit for them. And so out of that came his company, 48 Days. And as we lived it, we taught it, and we have been able to reach a lot of people, not just in finding work they love, but in creating it.
Great.
And so that's been the big focus, is that entrepreneurial, out-of-the-box lifestyle. And of course, that has gone over into our personal lives, both in my family of origin and now also the family that we have created. And so we're being very intentional about creating that lifestyle that we want to live and not just being a victim of circumstance.
Exactly. I wanted her to explain the family structure so we understood how her mission and passion developed. And do you want to kind of move into that for us a little bit about how you gained your own, love of being a life coach for people?
Sure. Yes, with Dad's company, one of the best-selling products that we have is the DISC personality profile. And that's something that I was passionate about even as a young kid. So some of my educational history, I had the sampler platter of education myself. So I did public school, private school, homeschool, group classes. I did a whole variety. And during my homeschooling years, I learned a lot about the personality profiles that my dad was using in his business. part of my lessons where I had my speech class was I actually had to present to a whole bunch of adults a story that I had written about DISC personality styles. I learned, creative writing that way and everything else. So I had lived and breathed these personality profiles through my childhood. And then I went to school and got a degree in psychology and just loved the human behavior and the way that we respond to things. And so I kind of took that and became the spokesperson for DISC in 48 days. Worked with getting a certification program set up for that and speaking with people. And I started to see that what would happen is we would have these live events with all of these coaches coming, building their businesses, and they're in these transitional phases where they're, they may be leaving a traditional job and coming and trying to build an entrepreneurial business. And I would be the one back in the corner with them looking at their profile graph and saying, okay, you need to have your spouse on board, and this is what your personality style is, and this is what your spouse's is, and how can you play on your strengths and be able to recognize that when those weaknesses come out and when those negative traits come out, that maybe it's because you're triggering a certain fear. And so we would start talking about it and really talking about the home dynamic, because as any entrepreneur knows, when you don't have your family support, that's a recipe for disaster, because the entrepreneurial lifestyle has ups and downs, and there's so much invested in it. It's not just everything handed on a silver platter. So you really have to work hard, and in order to do that, you have got to have the family support. The first way that you can do that is by everybody understanding what strengths they bring to the table and really having a good understanding of how, what my tagline is, how the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us. So as I saw myself being more and more pulled where everybody who came as a family component, whether it was a parent and child or whether it was a married couple that would come to these events, I would spend more and more time talking on the side with that, to where it was just a natural fit for me to then transition that over to Mama Says Namaste, which is my company, where I really work with people, like what you said earlier, work with the families, starting with the mamas and just helping them understand who they are and then how they can best connect and reach out to all of their family members. And that, of course, has then opened up the door to education now, as we've got children that are school age, and how when you understand the way a child ticks, how much more effectively you can engage them in the learning process.
Well, and I love how you talked about how you love authenticity and connection. I just see that so much, like from your childhood stemming to what you're doing with your own children. Let's kind of talk about that a little, of how you feel like your paradigm has kind of changed, learning how to be a personality coach, and then how that's affected your own family life.
Oh, it's been huge. Understanding where the personality plays in has made a big impact on the way that I parent. Because just for example, if something as simple as an introvert versus an extrovert child, for my kids, time out has two very different meanings depending on what child I'm talking to. I say it to my middle daughter, who is a social butterfly, and that is more of a discipline action. It's time for her to reset because she needs to be pulled out of a situation, and she sees it more as a punishment. When I say to my oldest, hey, Claire, I think it's time for you to have a timeout, she goes, oh, thank you, and she goes and runs to her room, because it's a moment for her to take a break and get away and recharge. And so just understanding the way they tick helps me in determining how to motivate them. So that's been a huge part of it. And I learned very quickly that no matter how many years I had babysat and nannied and was a preschool teacher and did psychology and everything else, nothing fully prepares you for parenthood. And every single child is different. It's a discovery of a new human being as they're discovering themselves. And so it can be a scary and intimidating process, and nobody has all of the answers. And I come in as a marriage and family coach. That doesn't mean that I have every answer for how to raise your specific child. But I have definitely learned some very valuable tips just in understanding the personality profiles and some of the other tools and resources that I've used that have really helped to make sure that although all the answers aren't all laid out in front of you, you can really become a lifelong learner and have your whole family be that way, where they're excited and engaged and willing to explore and go there and be authentic.
That is great. And I wonder how really learning those personality styles, you talked about your own educational experience being the smorgasbord. Is that why you chose to kind of go with the unschooling? Because you kind of understand how the personality types are. And tell us a little bit about how unschooling works for you guys and, what you've learned about that with the personality types.
I definitely wanted to be present with my kids. I feel like if I was going to have children, I wanted to be involved and engaged in the process. However, my personality style, being highly driven and I love to take on a ton of different things, I knew that I was going to be involved in things beyond just making meals for the kids and everything else. So I started to look at different entrepreneurial endeavors that I could do from home. I was born and raised with that mindset, so it was kind of a given that I wasn't necessarily going to be content clocking in for a 9-to-5 job, especially once I had children. So all the work that I have done has been something that I make my own schedule. I can work from anywhere, and I have a lot of flexibility. My husband has been pretty much the same. The first 6 years of our marriage, he was a banker and he worked in traditional work setting. And since then, he has been pretty fluid with his schedule as well. So here we have two parents who are fully flexible and love the independence of being able to set our own schedule and make our own decisions on where we go. We love to travel. Didn't make sense for us to then put our children in a school where then we are accountable to attendance. And we even interviewed at the public school near us. In order for us to be able to do some of the travels that we wanted to do, we would have to have our children just drop out and then re-enroll them. So it's just one of those, our model has been so fluid and unstructured in our own business choices. It didn't make sense for us to then look at having something that was so structured that we would have to answer to for our kids. That was kind of one of them. But then the other part of it is just that I love learning. And I was raised that way, where if I had an interest in anything, my parents' response is, if they didn't know the answer, which a lot of times they didn't, it is, well, I don't know. Let's go explore it together. Let's figure this out. And we would go on adventures, and we would do all kinds of trips where I would go and I'd shadow different people, and I'd do apprenticeships, and I'd learn the back end of things. And that's something that I wanted to be able to provide for my children as well.
Well, and a lot of people may not understand. We hear the terms homeschooling all the time, but they may not understand necessarily what unschooling looks like. I think that many, just ordinary people have in their mind that unschooling is just, you just let them just wander. There's no, give us an idea of kind of how that works in your family. You run out and look at things, but how do you create? In the bio that I read, you talk about checklists, and that sounds like you're a lot more structured than just letting them do whatever.
The checklists are things more that I use with parents on helping them. It's just little guidelines and principles to live with in their home. So we have things on how to create your family as your VIPs and how to engage the senses at home. Those are sort of the things that I use with checklists. But when it comes to actually schooling, it's very child-led. And for me, my goal with schooling the children is not that they know who the 15th president is. It's that they know how to find the answer that they're looking for, and that they become a lifelong learner, that they love the learning process and are engaged in that. And so the more that I can go with delight-led learning, the more I see that children retain it. So we as adults, when we want to learn something, we don't say, oh, well, I didn't learn that in school, I can't learn it now. We go out there and we find it. With the internet and all of the information overload that we have, we can pretty much learn anything that we want at any point. It's just a matter of knowing how to get to the right tool or resource to find it. Unschooling is different for every family. When you say you homeschool, all that means is your kid is not in a traditional school setting, but it's still very broad. There are a lot of definitions, and I lay out a lot of the different names on my educational resources page on my website. But for us, we are very loose. When it comes to unschooling, we allow for opportunities and we follow a lot of what the kids are interested in. So my 9-year-old now, she really had a hard time with reading. And if I were to look at, checkpoints and developmentally, she needs to do this, and in second grade and in third grade, we should cross this off, I could say my child was behind. But if I look at what she has done, she had her first business when she was 4, selling muffins. She would sell muffins, and then she went from there to learning all about art, became so involved in art that she started selling her paintings, realized that one painting only would get her so much, but if she could duplicate it onto a greeting card, she could sell it over and over again. She had a greeting card business, and at this point, she's 9 years old. She has her own website. She's spoken to elementary schools. She has spoken in front of a group of adult entrepreneurs, been on podcasts, and she has a book that will be released in bookstores in October that she co-wrote and she did all the illustrations for. That's through a traditional publisher.
Oh, wow.
So here are all these things, and I say, okay, is my child failing because she doesn't know the exact multiplication tables that they're going through in the third grade class? Or is she learning in a different way and being very open and engaged with it, and she knows all about green screens and video editing and illustrations? It's still stuff that can be very beneficial for her later on in life. If I'm giving her the tools to be able to find those answers herself, then what I want to do is I want to foster that learning environment all the time, not just an agenda of this and this and this needs to be covered this week.
My husband likes to, when people ask about unschooling or what that is, we do it every day. And he points out different ways that we unschool ourselves all the time. And then people are then it doesn't seem so weird because we as adults do it all the time. So why not start it and have that be more fluid as your child grows?
Right. And I've had people ask, when did you start homeschooling? And I said, well, as soon as they were born. That was the beginning of their education. And when they ask my kids, where do you go to school? The world is my school. Who's your teacher? Everyone's my teacher, because they have an opportunity to learn in every situation we are. And whether we're in our home cooking dinner or at the grocery store or staying for a month in Costa Rica, and we are exposed to so many excellent opportunities for them to be able to learn and grow from that.
Yeah, there's experts all around us.
Awesome. Definitely. And they can be a lot younger than you and a lot older. I know I have learned a ton from my children. The teaching is both ways, definitely.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about maybe some of the obstacles that you've had in your life and what you feel like you've learned about those or learned from those struggles that you've had.
We all have all kinds of different relationships in our lives, and the relationships and the people are what this world is about. And it's an understanding that we are all interconnected can create, a beautiful world that we live in. And we also can all get hit with those people that create toxicity in our lives, and that maybe are more out of obligation or because you have to for whatever reasons. Me kind of understanding and learning about people and about how to have a positive relationship and how, when that's not possible, to draw a clear boundary has been really huge. And in our life, in our family, we have had some experiences where we have had some pretty rough situations that have happened with some of our extended family. And in that process, my husband Nathan and I decided that we wanted to be very intentional about what our home was and what we allowed in our home. And that doesn't mean that we live in a bubble and that we shut out anything that's not perfect and happy. We embrace all emotions and we embrace people of all different paths of life and everything like that. And we also create a clear boundary of our home is a safe place. So much so, I came from this. My mom's book that just came out this year is called Creating a Haven of Peace. So this is something that, again, came from my childhood as well. But we've been very intentional about creating a home that gives us the energy that we want to be around, a positive environment, even to the extent that when we have family members where maybe there's a little bit more toxicity, or we have a serious, a hard conversation we need to have. We have it outside. In our home, as much as we can, is a peaceful environment, and we do everything we can to foster that.
Yeah, those feelings of toxicity can really create that negative feeling. That's definitely the energy maybe that's involved in that.
Yeah, and we've had fun with engaging the senses, making sure that in everything we do, we're looking at how does this affect us in all of the different senses. What do you see when you, for our home, for example? Of course, we're about to take our home on the road, but in any environment, but for example, of this in our home, what do you see when you walk into it? What do you feel? What do you hear? What smells are there? And how can we do things to foster all of that where it really is a place of peace and safety and security and love? Because for me, my goal is to have that love and that connection with my family.
Well, and when you talk about authenticity, do you feel like maybe people don't make very clear boundaries because they're afraid to be authentic? To really have those tough conversations, even though you're talking about, making your home kind of the safe place, you really do have to have those authentic conversations sometime. You can't just ignore it and put it under the carpet. What are your feelings on that?
Yeah, and that's where the personality styles have really been helpful for me, because to be authentic doesn't mean that you just say, I am what I am, so deal with it. You want to learn how to live in your strengths and recognize what your weaknesses are. So any strength, when overused or when under pressure, can become a weakness. And so in understanding the personality styles, I use the DISC style because it's really simple. There's just 4 different models, and you can go even a really simple way to remember them, and I use with kids a lot of times, is the animal references. So you have D is like a lion, I is like a peacock or an otter, S is like a golden retriever, and a C would be like a beaver or an owl. And so, and I can go with, there's tons of analogies as to what names are, animals and music and cars and everything else you can relate. But just thinking of those visuals that come to mind, well, each one of those has a fear. So for an S personality style, you have a golden retriever and somebody who's so loyal and supportive and a good listener, very patient, and really works to make sure that the relationships are number one. Now, their greatest fear, though, is a loss of security. And so you can have somebody who is the most caring, compassionate individual that you can rely on that'll be there, and all of a sudden they go, I don't care. And they shut down, and they may get the title of being lazy or indifferent. And it's so opposite of their personality style, or so opposite of what they normally are. But when you understand that personality style and you understand, okay, what's going on where they're feeling insecure, they're not feeling comfort in something, recognizing that and being able to kind of go in from that point and look at, okay, instead of me trying to attack them and say, you're being lazy or you're being a jerk, coming in and seeing how you can support and affirm them and give them an element of security helps them to become, she's being authentic either way, whether it's a bad attitude or a good attitude, but it helps to go back to what the strengths are. So, understanding something like that helps me to understand if I walk into a room of my high S child and the room is a disaster, I can sit there and I can confront, which is something that, again, can be a little bit hard for an S personality style. I can go in and I can confront and attack and say, why didn't you clean up your room? I asked you to do it. Or I can look at, okay, the day has been a really rough day. We're going through the middle of a big move. We have XYZ, whatever, that might be a period of transition that's hard for her to deal with. So maybe I go in and instead of just getting angry about a dirty room, I go in and I say, can we sit and talk for a little bit? What's going on? And how are you feeling with the way things are right now? And give them some affirmation and security, and you may have a whole different response.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that also helps propel learning. It helps propel, the comfort like you're talking about, where it is a safe haven, all those things.
Right. And understanding those personality styles and what's going to motivate each one. I have one kid where it's all going to be all about the goals. But if I tell another child that we have to meet this goal and this challenge, that's like the first way to shut them down. So just understanding what motivates them, what excites them, and what those fears are has helped me so much in creating the environment that I want and also bringing out the beautiful authenticity and not the negative traits that isolate us.
Yeah. Before we go on, let's listen to this message. Recently, the Luminous Mind became an affiliate for EduSense, which offers tremendous discounts on educational supplies. I personally use EduSense to purchase our family supplies because of their great prices, responsive shipping times, and best of all, the chance to earn EduBucks, which I use towards future purchases. Who doesn't love a great deal within a deal? To get a 90% savings on your EduSense materials, go to theluminousmind.net and click on the sponsor page to find the affiliate link. Start using EduSense to illuminate your educational experience. Welcome back to The Luminous Mind with Ashley Logsdon, helping strengthen others with uniqueness. Well, and I love that. You talked about a little bit earlier about your father kind of failing in his business and what he's learned. And obviously our obstacles, what we learn from those is more valuable than anything to us and help propel some successes, which is where I want to go now.
Right.
Tell me what you feel like some great successes that you've seen with, personality typing and then also having that connectiveness with your family. Tell me those successes.
Boy, I had somebody, a friend of mine, I was struggling with my oldest, who is very particular. She's a high C. She's very detailed and analytical, and things need to be a certain way. And so as a young child, it was great when they were a certain way. And if they weren't, oh my goodness, we were in trouble. And this is not a child that just says, it's not a big deal. It was, complete and utter meltdown. And I had a friend that told me, I was kind of at my wit's end one day, and they just said, meet her where she's at. And I recognized that my personality style and her personality style were both very strong-willed. And I had spent my time, battling. It was a battle of wills between me and a 2-year-old. And it was a lose-lose situation. Anyway, we looked at it. And when I kind of let go of my need to control, which I recognized was something that was an issue for me, when I let go of my need to control every situation and try to direct it and recognized that, each person has their own agenda and their own wild cards to throw in. And I just stopped and I was just present with her and met her where she was at. That helped to give her the security and the affirmation that regardless of whatever situation is going on, I'm your mommy and I love you. And I will sit here with you and we will get through this. Those little shifts created such a positive change that, now at 9, she is my most, she still has her nitpicky details, but she has learned so much the power of working together and working with us as opposed to both of us digging in our heels. So we've both learned a lot about compromise and love, and that people are always more important than the task, and that we want to work on being kind and loving over being right about everything.
Oh, yeah. I think our world, we have a world of people who want to be right.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
and then we don't have that authenticity because we're not all right?
Right, exactly. And there becomes a point that an argument can get away from you, and you recognize that it's more about who has the last word, and you can get to the point where you don't even remember what the original battle was about. You're just battling to battle.
Yeah.
And I have seen those fights where it just gets away from people, where they've lost everything, and it's just the hurt and the anger coming out. And so I want to help people to understand how to connect before they get to that hurt and anger part.
Great. Well, let's kind of move on to that of how you serve other people with your mentoring. You know, we've talked a lot about kind of skirting around those personality styles. Maybe delve into that a little bit more and how you use that to help other people.
So I absolutely love helping people to understand their own personality style, because if you're having issues with connecting with anyone else, first and foremost, you need to understand who you are. If you understand how you communicate, then that's the first step in being able to effectively communicate to other people. So when I do the profile, every coaching client that I work with, the very first step is going through this personality profile. And in the profile, there are some graphs, and the graphs really help me to see, I kind of call it, it's like my psychic reading. Like I can look at the graphs, and it's amazing how much insight you can get just from looking at these little graphs. There's no right or wrong profile. There's not a wrong way to take it, because all it is just open a door to a conversation about introspection, really, and kind of saying, does this resonate with you? Does this not? Why or why not? So we go into it and we really look at how they perceive they are to others, and then kind of what their core is and what their stress response is. We talk about how they can use it as their strength, and how when they react in this way, it might be because they're feeling a lack of control, or they're afraid of criticism or rejection or security. And so I kind of help them to get a good feel for them. And then the next step is, okay, now we have a good feel for what your strengths are and just the beautiful person that you are. So now let's look at your significant other, and let's see what their personality style is and how you two can work together as a team. What's going to cause, a brick wall or a confrontation, and what's going to cause collaboration and connection. And then once we've done that, okay, now I've got you two on a unified front. Let's address the kids. How do you connect with your kids? If your child is a C, how do you teach them? How do you discipline them? How do you motivate and encourage them? So we understand all of that. So a lot of I do the coaching for the mamas and then ultimately for the families. But then I also have 2 Facebook groups, one that is specifically focused on the education side, that's unschooling families, and then one that's focused on the family home atmosphere. That's my Mama Says Namaste group. So I engage in the communities, I do the coaching sessions, and then I'm always developing new products. So I have a free ebook that I would love to share with your audience that is about the personality styles. It's called Disc Quick Tips for Families. So it just has a quick summary of what the different personality styles are, and then some tips on how to connect with your child when they are each personality style.
Well, and I love the connection, with families. We kind of talked before we began recording that I always get, and I'm sure anybody else who's ever homeschooled, I could never do that. I need my kids to go away. I need my space or whatever. And we kind of discussed before that there is a lack of understanding how to parent, and, not having those great connections to begin with. We talked about having to go through deschooling and, how that all works. Do you have maybe some advice on that, of how, if you have a family who's struggling in the relationship and their communication, how can we properly go through the deschooling and create more connection?
Well, I think a great way to start, I have a blog that I wrote that was about my family vision. So I did a little video and we talked about family vision. And the family vision was something that we decided to do, obviously, as a family. We all sat down. I have small children, so my family vision has been reduced down to 6 words: explore, respect, listen, connect, learn, and love. And so that family vision encompasses kind of what we want our family and our schooling to be like. And so for us, it's for anybody, you have to kind of go into it with, what's the goal of this? Why are you wanting to homeschool? Is it because you want to instill these certain principles, or is it because you have a desire to travel and that's what fits it? Or because they're struggling at school? Understanding kind of what the goal is behind it is the first step in formulating the type of schooling style that fits for your family. A lot of times people look at homeschooling or unschooling or one of the many other titles that you can call it, and they say, I could never do that, because what they're envisioning is what that is public school at home.
Oh,
and
yeah.
For some people, myself included, that could not be further from the truth. And so there are people that even, like, if they're looking at unschooling, they actually go through a deschooling process first, and that's twofold. One, letting go of your concept of the way school needs to be, that I need to have it with homework or worksheets or testing or a schedule and a set curriculum or anything else. It's letting go of what your concept of school is. And then the other part of it is sometimes what is needed. And what I advise people is, if you're going through a transition, you've had a separation, and there's lots of frustration with your child. We have a lot of people that choose to homeschool because their kid is struggling so badly in school, and they hate the learning process, and they're at odds with their parents, and there's so many things going on. And my first suggestion is put school down, stop, and build a foundation of a relationship between the two first. Because just forcing this agenda of you have to learn this and this, when they're in a place of hurt and anger and frustration, you're going to get nowhere fast. How many adults decide that they're going to take on some new learning thing? You know, I'm going to learn Spanish right in the midst of having a divorce, and I'm in a move, and, you know, X, Y, and Z is happening.
Yeah.
We don't do that. We learn the most when we are in a supportive environment that allows us to fully engage and be present in it. So if you are not at that point, then the first and foremost step is getting to that point with the relationship. And that doesn't mean you've lost valuable time of not being able to learn. Oh my gosh. The number one thing that all of us have to learn is how to live together. Yeah. And that is our number one goal. And that is something that, you know, sometimes in the school system, it's kind of hard to be able to do. You're not allowed to socialize. So, you know, we want to look for how can you work on building that connection with people first. The learning, I promise, follows. Once you're in that point and you've got that mindset that you're open to it, it's amazing how quickly they learn.
Yeah. Well, and I love what you're talking about, you know, learning how to communicate is really the number one skill, because, you know, we see that all the time when kids come out. They don't know how to express to people what they need or what they want, or, right, you know, what direction they want their lives to go. They don't know who to ask to have them mentored by, things like that. Right. And it really is a valuable skill. So I'm excited that you are willing to give our audience your free ebook, because it can be helpful in that way.
Yeah, I hope so. I've got lots of resources for that, with just some little tips to kind of spur your thinking on it, because my oldest was struggling with reading and I thought was going to never pick up reading. And so I put it down and I gave her space. And she didn't really become much of a reader until she was about 8.5 years old. And she immediately went into chapter books, and she loves reading. And the other day she told me, you know, Mommy, I can't look at any letters without just automatically reading everything. And here I was thinking, this child is borderline dyslexic. She has hated reading. And when I would get frustrated, that was the point that she would shut down. And when I gave her some space to grow and do it on her own, and she chose these sorts of books that she picked up, her first reading book was an animal encyclopedia that was her dad's when he was little.
Oh, that's great. And that is one of the things about kids and about adults. You know, when we finally have that authentic feelings, you know, of this is something that I want, we strive for it ourselves, and we no longer have to be pushed. So
right.
Well, let's talk about some personal habits that you have that you feel have been helpful to your success.
We have some things that are kind of tried and true that are in our house in order to make sure that nobody's running on an empty cup. You cannot serve others when you haven't taken care of yourself first. And so what we try to do is we try to create an environment where both Nathan and I have an opportunity to recharge. So I've been doing hot yoga for 2 years, and I made myself accountable by being an assistant. So I actually have to be there twice a week. to assist and help out at the studio. And it has been wonderful for me to be able to have that time to force myself, because as a mama, it's easy to always put yourself on the back burner. And to be intentional about a little bit of time that I can take care of myself and recharge has been really valuable. Then another thing that we do is daily, my husband and I connect. Every night, we have had a 7 to 7 rule for ages. And as all of us parents know, committing to 7 o'clock to 7 in the morning every single night when you have children is a complete joke. That's not going to happen. There's always the curveballs and something happens, and, it's a beautiful summer night and we make an exception and we're out playing. But we like to have kind of a general rule of thumb that around 7 o'clock, we're getting our kids ready for bed. Usually at this point, now that they're older, by 8 o'clock, they're in bed. And from 8 at night, 7 to 8 at night until 6 or 7 in the morning, that's mommy daddy time. And so we make it a point to connect every single night, and we connect mentally, emotionally, and physically. And we do every night, and I've got a whole blog series on my website that's called Laughter, Humble Pie, and Lots of Sex. And it goes over those, and I kind of go through the 6 key tips that are really important for having a relationship that is authentic and connected, and that you are connected mentally, emotionally, and physically. So that has been a huge thing that we have had as kind of our ritual and routine every day that we do. And in doing that, it's hard to have a wedge between us and distance between us when every single night we're checking in with each other.
Yeah, I think we really discount that healthiness of that relationship. A lot of us mothers, and especially homeschooling moms, our children come first. And sometimes when we neglect that relationship that we have with our spouse, that does a lot of harm for our own children and the relationship that they'll have in the future with their spouse, correct?
Oh, yes.
You kind of have to model that in order to...
Right. And we talk about that. The girls know that time is ours because they know that it is super important that mommy and daddy are on the same page. And so we reiterate that with the kids constantly. We make exceptions where we have special late nights with a child or something like that, but it's not an everyday occurrence because we tell them it's super important that mommy and daddy are on the same page and that we are connected so that we can give as much as we can to them. And us being connected allows us to not get burned out with our kids, because being a parent, I have so much respect for single parents, because if you don't have a community or some support system, I don't know how you can do it. I try as hard as I can to be a good parent to my children. And I am the first to admit I have bad mommy moments. I have bad mommy days sometimes. And there are those times where I look at Nathan and I say, your turn. And he steps up and he takes it. He takes over and allows me a little bit of time to recharge and get away so that I really can be a better parent. My sister-in-law had a business for a while that was called Mommy Sabbatical, and it said, take a break from the ones you love so you can love them better. And I love that tagline because it's so true. There are times that the best thing that you can do is to step out and give yourself a little time out so that you're not speaking in anger or frustration or exhaustion or everything else. And so the more connected you are with your spouse, the more you can recognize that and work together instead of attacking your spouse because, they're shut down and sitting on the couch and staring blankly, instead of going in and going, what the heck are you doing? Why isn't dinner on the table? Or why aren't you helping with the kids? Going in and saying, you seem like you're a little fried. What can I do to help you? Or let me take care of dinner. Something like that can make all the difference in the world and really create a family that is working as a team and not just a battle of everybody being frustrated with what everybody else should be doing. You don't want to should on your family.
That's funny. Well, and part of that too is sometimes when we have better connections with our family, we're less likely to feel like the martyr, right? And having that authenticity to speak honestly of like, I can't be and do all of this. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, having humility is a big thing. When we coined for the marriage section of my blog and my coaching and everything being that laughter, humble pie, and lots of sex, because Physical connection is one of the things that divides it from being a companionship or a roommate or a friend or anything else. And so the physical aspect of intimacy, that's huge. Laughter, keeping it fun, remembering the play side. Usually, we flirt and we have fun and we play when we're dating, and then it becomes work and it's just grueling, and we forget that fun side of it. Being able to just, laugh together and laugh at ourselves is huge. And then that humility to be able to say, yeah, it's more important that we connect as a family than I prove that I'm right in this situation, or admitting I wasn't right. I'm wrong. And I'm sorry. I messed up. And I love you enough to work on this and not just be here because I can stand on my high horse up here by myself, or I can step down, learn something, and create a deeper, more authentic relationship with somebody else. And I want family. I don't want isolation.
Connectedness, definitely. Mm-hmm. So you kind of already talked about having a vision for your family, but if you could leave a legacy, what could it be, and how are you working on that?
The legacy, really, I feel like my family vision has a lot of that in there. I want to leave a legacy where the people that I come across are open to authenticity, open to engaging, and respecting others and kind of where they're at. It's more about creating that connection and being present in the moment. So my legacy is not that I was a multimillionaire or that I was the perfect mother or anything else. It's that I hopefully have lived and created an environment where I love and I learn. And I'm excited about both, and I want to pass that on to my family and to anyone else I come across.
It's wonderful. Well, before we say goodbye, do you have any final parting words for our listeners? And then please give us your contact information of how they can get in touch with you.
Sure. Yeah, my website is mamasaysnamaste.com. And namaste, if you are not familiar with that term, I have a full description on my website, but Namaste, part of it, of course, is that I am definitely a yogi, and yoga is a very big part of my life. But Namaste is what you end usually you end your yoga sessions with, and it, in my interpretation, is the love, the light, the joy inside, and the peace inside of me respects, honors, and admires the love, joy, light, and peace inside of you. So it's that feeling of ultimate connection between two people. And that's what I want to be able to impart to more and more people, is that we're beautiful souls, and there is something that you can learn from every single person you come across. It may be you learn what you don't want to do, or what you don't want to have in your family or in your home or in your personality style, but you always have the opportunity to learn something. And you've got to remember, behind every head and every thought and opinion that comes out, there is a heart in there too. And there is an element of beauty that you can seek out and you can connect with. So you can read more about my musings, and I have different series on personality styles, on unschooling, on marriage, and authenticity. And that's all at mamasaysnamaste.com. And then I have 2 Facebook communities where we kind of can go into more about unschooling in my Unschooling Families community, and more about family connections, family dynamics in my Mama Says Namaste community. So those 3 places are the best ways to connect with me, and I would love to see people post questions on there and get some dialogue. I love to see other people responding, so it's not just coming to me. It's being able to get a community of people that support, and there's a lot of people that say, hey, I completely feel you. I've been there as well. So that's really fun. And then if you are looking at really wanting to kind of see a little bit more about what the personality styles are and how to create a home that you really are excited about coming home to, and deeper connections in your family, then I would love to be able to work individually with any family as well.
You were just talking about how, you can learn from anybody. So the Facebook group and all of those are great ways to, have that authenticity and to learn from each other. So
right.
Great. And, but we will be sure to also link all that information that we discussed today at our website as well. But thank you so much, Ashley, for joining us. It has been just a pleasure to talk with you. And I appreciate you coming on and helping us light our minds on fire. Thank
you. Thanks for having me again.
Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind. To learn more about Ashley Logsdon, go to our show notes at theluminousmind.net. Be sure to become a subscriber to our free email list and get our new monthly newsletter. Then check out our services tab to see how we can continue to assist you, our fire starters. Also, to help us continue production of inspiring content, go to the sponsor tab at theluminousmind.net for more information on sponsorship and affiliate programs. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, Google+, Pinterest, and now Instagram. Get our free audio content by subscribing on YouTube, iTunes, and Stitcher. To help us grow, consider these easy ways. Tell your friends about us. Leave us a review. Share our content. Tell us how we can help you so together we can continue to light minds on fire and change the paradigm of education.